Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very brief Paddock Pass podcast show this week because we've been inundating you with World Superbike content thanks to Steve and Gordo being on the road with back-to-back rounds. But David, Neil, and I are gathered together in various states of sweat and intensity and verbal diarrhea at the ready to stick over a few topics in this short show. We're hoping to speak to Davide Brivio about the recent announcement of the Trackhouse Racing renewal, really, when it comes to Raul Fernandez. But then also a few other topics. Dave, you caught up with Luca Marini as well. We're going to ask you what that was about and mainly why. Just before we get to Luca later on in the show. But first of all, I'm going to come to you, Mr. Neil Morrison. How are you handling the heat in Barcelona? Are you missing MotoGP? And how excited are you for Silverstone?
To start with the heat, I'm handling it by regular trips to either shops, cinemas, or gyms where there's really serious air conditioning. So time at home is quite tough, quite insufferable. Although I'm quite puzzled by the fact that David seems to be the reddest of the three of us, even though he's in the kind of coolest climate. Am I missing MotoGP? I'm starting to miss MotoGP, actually. Yeah, I had about a week where I wasn't, and it was lovely to be on holidays, and now I'm starting to think about it again. And Silverstone, yes, excited to get back into that, which is, just over a week away.
Dave, I know you're chomping at the bit to talk about the latest contract renewal, particularly for one of your most favourite riders on the grid. But how have you been up there in the Netherlands? Have you been cycling or riding of a motorised version?
I have been cycling. It's actually been sweltering here as well. It was like 30-something degrees and like about 90% humidity, which was absolutely horrendous. And even now it's cooled off a lot, but it's still really, really sweaty, which is quite unpleasant. But apart from that, quite good. I'm right in the middle of doing my annual taxes, so that's about as much fun as you can imagine. And yes, I mean, like, it's actually my accountant who does most of the work, but I've still got to actually sort through all of my receipts and type them into spreadsheets, and wish I was, genuinely doing anything other than that.
Are you at the point where you want to extract your own teeth, or you're not quite there yet?
Oh no! I've still got that phase to pass through.
Right, okay then. Guys, if you're slightly twisted and want to be watching this podcast through YouTube, then don't forget to like and subscribe, because that will give you regular updates when we post content there, not just on weekly shows, but if we can get any snippets of interviews, then we'll also post them on that particular platform. Those of you on SoundCloud are making the far more sensible choice not to look at our mugs, then carry on listening. And also don't forget to come over to Patreon. We keep banging this drum, but if you are going to be a Patreon subscriber and you go up to the Insider tier, which is just $10 a month for loads of extra content, you'll also be able to enter our competition for the British Grand Prix up next in the MotoGP calendar. And we've got 3 pairs of tickets, roaming grandstand entrance tickets. So you'll be able to go around the track and dip into whatever particular section that you fancy. Thanks to those kind folks at Silverstone. An amazing track, great history, usually a popular event if the rain stays away. So if you fancy going to Silverstone and you want to join the Paddock Pass podcast, Paddock Insider section of Patreon, then just sign up really easily. Your name will go into a draw. There's not that many of you, so don't worry, you're not going to be up against thousands and thousands and thousands of people for these tickets. And there's a very good chance you're going to get a pretty decent prize, it has to be said. As we mentioned on the show, we're going to be speaking to Trackhouse Racing's team. He's not the team manager, team director. What's the official title, Dave?
I think it's team director. But now you've completely thrown me, and I'm going to have to Google it.
I'm going to sort of revert to Neil, although he's looking worryingly at the screen, which means he's also looking at it. So the heights of journalistic professionalism once more on the Paddock Pass podcast. But we've got Davide coming up. We're recording this just before we speak to him. And the first thing I want to ask you guys is that Trackhouse kind of teased a rider signing. And the way it was done, it was like somebody new was coming into the setup. So was it maybe a little bit underwhelming that it was actually just a contract renewal for Raul Fernandez? What are your thoughts, Neil?
I think we saw a teaser video earlier in the week with Justin Marks, and I think basically he was supposed to be looking at a screen with his new rider or a rider on it, and he said, "That's my guy." So I think everyone was thinking like, okay, it's obviously a new signing. A little underwhelming, but at the same time, pretty decent publicity because everyone was looking at it. Everyone was pressing refresh on their inbox yesterday afternoon at the kind of, as every hour drew to a close. And, it was fairly successful publicity, I would say.
Yeah, Dave, your Googling efforts have been successful, and Davide Brivio is the team principal. So well done there for bashing a few keys. We're on the money. What are your thoughts, Dave? Because I think on Twitter you were sort of positing it might be Jack Miller. I mean, there was some other reactions to your tweet saying it could be Joan Mir, and in the end it ends up being Raul. I've got my own opinion on this, but first I would like to know what you thought about the reveal, for want of a better word.
Well, on the one hand, it was incredibly disappointing because you did get the sense that this is going to be something interesting and something exciting. Then again, I think most of the names that he was going through were all of his existing NASCAR drivers, so that could have been taken as a hint. But given that I know zero about NASCAR, that would have involved me knowing something about cars, and life is way too short for that. As someone else pointed out to me on Twitter, look, we got us talking about it. Publicity, PR opportunities are limited. There's not a lot you can do about these sort of things, and you have to generate some interest somehow. We've all been wanging on about the excitement around Mark at the second Ducati seat, and Jorge Martin going to Aprilia, and all the rest of it. And so it's good. It's a good way to actually generate some interest, even if it's only sort of very briefly before it all fades away into disappointment. As for the second seat, well, we'll see. But I think that's much more interesting. Just from a curiosity point of view, and it's also going to be important because the other thing is, it looks like Miguel is gone from Pramac, and that means that Aprilia is going to have 3 new riders in their lineup, and the only person they'll be keeping is Raul, and that's going to put a lot of responsibility on Raul's shoulders, I think, because he's going to be the only person when they start developing the 25 bike who will have had experience with the 24 bike, and I think that's going to be really, really important. I think it's quite a risk to lose so many of their riders.
Trackhouse Racing is the newest team on the grid, and Raul Fernandez does he deserve the ride? I think that's the big question. Maybe not only I have, but fans of MotoGP as well. In 2.5 seasons in MotoGP, he's got a best finish of 5th. I think he has maybe half a dozen top 10 results. One school of thought could be, well, no. I mean, we get to Silverstone next, and apparently he's going to have the RS GP24, so he's going to be on the same technical level as his teammate at least. But then, you have to look a little bit of the context of Fernandez, also his age. And I think it's also encouraging that MotoGP teams or experts or management are not going to cast off like a young, promising rider who, we are all basically lauding when he was ruling Moto2 for one single season. So I don't know. Do you agree with me, guys? Do you think, Raul is very much a work in progress and deserves this slot in quite a prominent visual team?
I mean, I have been extremely critical of Raul in the past because he just has not lived up to the hype. He seems like the kind of rider who has so much talent that they get an awful long way until they get to the very highest level, where he's up against riders with not just talent but also a deep intelligence. And a deep intelligence about racing, about all of the ingredients which it takes to put, to go racing, which includes things like, teamwork, building a team, working with a team, how to motivate the people around you to do the things that you need to go fast, how to understand how to prioritize. Okay, this isn't working, but it's much more important that we fix A and we can fix B later. I can manage all the rest. Those are the bits that I think that are missing with Raul. But I think it was also inevitable. I mean, again, let me emphasize, the dude has talent coming out of his ears. But there's bits that are missing. But again, I think that, or I worry that they had to sign him because he was, otherwise Aprilia would have had 4 new riders potentially, and having 4 new riders, no one with experience of the bike would put so much pressure on the shoulders and so much responsibility on the shoulders of Lorenzo Savadori that it would have been really, really difficult. It would have meant really struggling in the first half of 2025, I think. They're already going to struggle a bit, like Jorge Martin is going to take time to get up to speed. Marco Bezzecchi's going to get time to get up to speed. Whoever they put on the second Trackhouse bike, they've all got to sort of figure out the nuances of riding a different bike. So yeah, it's not going to be simple.
I would tend to agree with most of that, Dave, to be honest. Raul has been pretty disappointing on the whole in his MotoGP career, although there have been a few little bright spots in the last 7 or 8 weeks, I would say. Barcelona, when he was leading the sprint race, was the first time that we really saw that Moto2 rider in MotoGP form. Qualified really well, was leading the sprint, and then had a pretty good race on the Sunday as well. Was leading his teammate Miguel Oliveira in the championship up until the last race at the Sachsenring. And the Sachsenring was a place where he had that front row start, and okay, the 2 races didn't quite go to plan, but again, there was a sign that he could at least put it on the front row. He could at least mix it with some of the top guys for a bit of the race. So yeah, I think the fact that they don't want to start completely afresh next year with 4 new riders is definitely something. But as Massimo Rivola told us in Mugello, I think the day of the test after the race, he has access to Raul's data. He can see what he can do in a bike. And there is that feeling, when you speak to the team, his crew chief, Noé Herrera, there is that feeling that it is going to eventually click. There is that belief that he is so talented that once it does click, great things will happen. It's taken 2.5 years. We still haven't seen the finished article just yet. I think in many other teams, in many other situations, he would have probably been out at this point. But the situation Aprilia are in, Trackhouse, I think he's found a situation where they are just willing to be a bit more patient with him.
I mean, Raul, until Pedro Acosta came into the class, was the youngest rider on the MotoGP grid. I mean, he's still only 23. So I just do think you need to give him a bit more time. I mean, I think this latest contract is pivotal for him. It's going to make him or break him, I think, or cement his future on the MotoGP grid, certainly. But Dave, I wanted to react to something you said, because continuity is an important thing. If you look at Honda now, they've got Alessio Spargaro and Stefan Bradl on their test team. KTM, of course, have Danny Pedrosa and Paulo Spargaro at the moment. Yamaha have Carl Crutchlow. You'd assume that they need to maybe get somebody else in to carry some of the load there. Ducati use Michele Pirro, but they already have a third of the grid providing data when it comes to the development of the motorcycle. So, you have to look at Aprilia and think, well, is Savadori really going to be carrying most of the burden again? Maybe Aprilia do need to find someone somewhere that could carry, take on some of that load in terms of advancing the RSGP, because they're going to have a lot of different input coming for 2025.
Yeah, I mean, the part of the problem for Aprilia is not so much finding a second test rider as finding the team to put around the second test rider and finding the budget to actually run a second test team. It's not just a question of, sort of finding an ex-MotoGP rider and saying, "Hey, do you fancy a Swedes testing gig?" It's a lot more complicated than that. Also, because Aprilia are in the same testing category or concessions category as KTM, and they don't have as much testing time. They do have more testing tires than Ducati do, obviously, but their testing is still limited, so they can't just sort of throw money at it or throw testing at it the way that Honda and Yamaha have been able to do. But it's a big. It is a heavy load, but it's not. Like I say, you can't just sort of throw things into throw names into a hat and hope that something comes out. You actually have to build an awful lot of infrastructure around it. So yeah, I think like I said, I think the continuity is really, really important in this respect.
Davide Brivio is not going to tell us, of course, but Dave, I mean, you seem to think that Miguel's on his way out of Trackhouse, and as we mentioned, Jack Miller and Joan Mir seem to be the front runners, even though Mir has been linked with a 2-year renewal at Repsol Honda, or HRC rather, depending on what happens at Repsol next year. Are we just putting money on the Australian then for that second seat? I mean, would that be the wisest choice, Neil? Is there anyone else that you think, we're maybe not considering that we should?
Well, popular wisdom would have it that Joe Roberts would make a fine addition to that squad, be an American in an American team. We've talked about this quite a lot, but I think that's not going to happen. I've heard through the grapevine that, that's just not going to happen. And Brivio and the Trackhouse team couldn't be convinced of that Roberts was the right man. So, that sort of narrows the net somewhat. And obviously, I think Miguel was maybe the first pick or the rider that they wanted to stay, but he's had his eyes turned by the signs of it. And Miguel's a very proud kind of character. You could tell that he was slightly upset that Aprilia didn't really factor him into the equation for their factory team. And we saw this at KTM as well when he left there, that once that decision's made, he feels, okay, I need to find somewhere else. So in that case, Jack Miller, I think, is probably the most obvious candidate.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Miller is the safest choice, basically. There aren't an awful lot of other options. Yes, Joe Roberts would be a logical person to put in there, but there is also, it feels like, if you think about the lack of names which are being mentioned, or the lack of Moto2 names being mentioned, there doesn't seem to be a great deal of interest in bringing riders through, in looking for the next young thing. We seem to be stuck with, that's putting it rather unfortunately, but we seem to be stuck with the current grid that we have. All of the management is looking at this group of riders who are actually relatively young. I haven't done the sums, but I would suspect that this is one of the youngest grids that we've seen for a very, very long time. Lots of riders in their early 20s, early to mid 20s sort of thing. We've got fewer 30-year-olds, and there's not so much room, and team managers feel they have more of a choice. But I think the bigger factor is that with all of these factories being, if you look at Trackhouse, for example, they've got an extremely competitive bike. It's as competitive as the Aprilia. We've seen what as the factory bike. We've seen what the factory bike has been capable of. With both Maverick and LH winning races and being sort of in the hunt for the championship, even if they are sort of in that second tier. And so putting a younger rider on it is a much less attractive proposition. If you need a lot of interest, if you need if you need results, if you need to try to attract people to your project, if you're looking to get sponsors, what you need is results, and that means you need a much more established rider, a much more established name, a rider who's been proven capable of winning races. Like Jack Miller fits that perfectly. This would be, I think, his fourth different MotoGP bike after the Honda, the Ducati, and the KTM. He's got experience changing bikes as well. He's not sort of locked into a single style. It just makes an awful lot of sense. There's other choices are limited. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about Joan Mir, but it does seem that Joan wants to stick with HRC. Whenever he speaks about it, he says, "Look, I don't want to abandon this project. So I don't want to give up and walk away." Also, because he'd be walking away from a very comfortable factory contract to go to a much less financially attractive satellite project. They would literally be taking a zero off of his contracts to go ride for a second, to go ride on an Aprilia. So
and he's having such a great time as well at Honda.
He
looks like he's really enjoying himself.
He really is. He definitely is really enjoying himself. But he probably wipes away his tears of an evening with crisp new 50s. So it's one of those things. I think it's a dilemma that a lot of riders find themselves in. Like, do I go for the money? Because you do have a fixed you do have a set period of time in which to earn for the rest of your life.
Yeah, don't underestimate how much a fat check can ease the bumps while you're going through the gravel, I guess, is the message.
Yeah.
But when it comes to age, Dave, I think you might have missed out on the other Trackhouse saddle. So the old argument of age against experience is not sort of swinging too much in your favor there, unfortunately. But you are the only one among us, who does have a road bike. And I don't know if you considered any accessories recently, but as you know full well, go to rental.com. If you're after some new bars, some new clip-ons, grips, anything to do with just basic high quality accessories, then rental.com really is the place to go and check it out. Also, a worthy mention for Fly Racing. It's their 25th anniversary in 2024. They've recently unveiled their 2025 off-road line. So if you ride dirt bikes and you want some really, again, high quality but reasonably priced kit, then go and have a look at flyracing.com. Big thanks to the Americans for partnering the podcast this year. Guys, let's move on to a little bit of news before we get on to our interview with Davide. And it emerged today, Neil, that Simon Crafar is now almost 6 years into his TV role with Dorna. Is actually going to be joining Race Direction, which is a bit of a sort of left turn, I guess you could say, for the Kiwi. But the first thing that strikes me with this particular sort of press release or news is that it's a loss for the Dorna TV production, because ever since his sort of auspicious beginning, I think, Simon's been, nothing but a complete asset in terms of explaining MotoGP, not just to experts, but also to newcomers and fans. I think that's been his real particular skill, keeping the whole thing interesting to a wide range of viewers. So it's going to be a loss for Dorna, but then I guess also it's Race Direction's gain. And what's your personal feelings on it?
Yeah. It'll definitely be a loss to Dorna and the TV coverage, because I think Simon's been one of the big attractions over the last couple of years, especially since he has jumped up into the commentary box. I think from 2022, he's just been able to offer so much technical insight and can offer up so many stories from his career as well, which are relevant to the present day. He's pretty forthright and opinionated. So yeah, he's someone that you definitely listen to when he's talking. But I think in his time in the paddock, since he's come back as a commentator, pit lane reporter, he's managed to build up a great deal of respect from people within the paddock. And as we've spoken about a few times on this show, I think the current respect and feeling towards the FIM stewards has been pretty low. It came to the point where Bastianini even refused to take his penalty in Barcelona because he thought, well, I feel you're wrong and I'm going to dig my heels in here and basically refuse to do what you're telling me, which is kind of what happens when, all respect has gone out the window. So there have been instances in the past. I think I remember Lynn Jarvis writing a pretty strongly worded press release saying that his faith in the FIM stewards had greatly diminished. I think that was in 2022 after they handed Fabio Quartararo a long lap penalty for his actions in Assen. And generally, when you speak to riders, there's a feeling of frustration, anger, sometimes. And this has been going on for quite some time. So I think they decided to shake things up and put in a figure that is very well respected, but also is not scared of confrontation. I mean, Simon's a lovely guy, but he's also he's also a pretty forthright character, and he doesn't suffer fools gladly. I think that's safe to say. Anyone that might have criticized him on Twitter will have, I think, found that out. And yeah, I think he kind of carries that sort of status and respect within the paddock, to be able to make tough calls and to be able to deal with, for example, very, very angry Davide Tardozzi, who's coming up screaming and shouting at you after you've made a decision that impacts one of his riders. He's the kind of character that can say, "Oi, look, calm down. This is what my thinking is. So that's the way it is." And from what I've heard, some of the figures in the FIM stewards panel, maybe Freddie Spencer being one of them, is not that kind of confrontational character. And he's not someone that can really explain his decisions. It's just like, this is the way it is. Accept it, deal with it. And that doesn't go down well. It doesn't tend to go down well with kind of angry and emotional riders. You know, I think Crafar is someone that can maybe be a bit more confrontational, diffuse the situation basically with his explanations. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, and you have to imagine it's going to be a good thing for the show.
Dave, Simon's always not veered towards the riders, but he's always taken the riders' side, or he has been critical when it's been necessary. And again, this is why he's been such a good pundit. But is it going to be awkward for him having to make maybe some hard decisions, or some decisions that are incredibly marginal but end up penalising one particular party? I mean, it's not really a job you want to take if you want to win a popularity contest.
Yeah, but I don't think that Simon is all that concerned about winning a popularity contest. He is an incredibly straight person. You know exactly what you're going to get. Sometimes that's quite sort of intimidating as well. But I mean, as Neil said, he is really, really straight. He's going to tell you exactly what it was. He's also very good at explaining what happened and why. He seems to have a much better understanding of what's going on than because like he can go through, and I've disagreed with him on when we've been sat around talking about particular incidents, like he's been able to explain, like, this is what happened, this is why it happened, and you can sort of like see his thinking, and then you're just into a discussion of should it be allowed or not. And I think he's very good at explaining that, and I think that is going to be his real strength in race direction. And also, not being afraid of people, being able to just say, no, this is the way that it is, and you can be angry all you like, but that's just this is why we're doing it, and this is the line that we're doing it. It's the most difficult thing for the riders. It has been to try to understand what the line is, that or where the line is, if you like, like if they know where the line is, then they can go over it. All you ever hear from, or they can understand why they get punished when they go over it. A lot of what you hear from riders is just complaints about, yeah, well, I got punished for that, but why didn't he get punished for that, and all the rest of it. Now, to a certain extent, that's what riders do. That is, the basic sort of playground mentality of all professional sports, where the refs are always against them, and never for me. But they are generally fairly reasonable in understanding that if everyone gets the same treatment, then they'll still feel a little bit hard done by, because they feel they should get special treatment. But at least they'll stop feeling that other riders are not getting special treatment. So, yeah, I think it's a good move, and also just to restore trust in the institution. The thing is that there was no trust, no faith in the stewards anymore, and that is an untenable situation. It's not a situation that can continue, that could continue, and it's good that the FIM and Dorna have stepped in and done something about it.
As we mentioned, we're delighted to have Davide Brivio on the show, so let's head straight into the interview with the Trackhouse Racing team principal. Davide, thank you ever so much for joining us. I can appreciate that it's still the summer break for MotoGP, so it's probably not very desirable for you to be doing podcasts and interviews before we arrive in Silverstone. But of course, your team announced the contract renewal with Raul Fernandez, and the most obvious question is, what was the motivation behind that? Was there a belief that Raul was only part of the way through his journey in MotoGP and with the team in particular?
Yeah, hi, hello to everybody, and yeah, this announcement also tells you that there's not been a great break so far, but anyway, it just kept working. And no, behind Raul is like we could appreciate, of course, as you know, we are a new team. We came in and we started to, as we say, we we are learning, we are trying to understand things, and we really, I mean, we think that Raul has a great talent. He has a great potential. He's young, and he's. I found him very keen to learn, to improve himself, and my feeling is that maybe before he was a little bit, let's say, he was in a hurry, let's say, to get results, and he wanted to get results immediately. So we just slow down a little bit the process and explain and talk together, which is completely agree that you need to come through. You need to start the process. You need to start the journey to learn, to work, to learn, to improve step by step, to improve the bike, to improve the feeling, to improve everything. And this is something that we kind of started, and it will be interesting. I think we felt it will be interesting to continue this process, this work, providing that, as I say, he's a talented rider. He has a potential to be a top rider in MotoGP. So we try. We decided to go into this challenge.
Davide, Massimo Rivola told us back at Mugello that he can see things on the data that Raul does on the bike that us journalists obviously don't have access to, and he can see just what a special talent he is. I guess as the team principal, that's something that you can see as well. And also how important is continuity in your team with both of Aprilia's factory riders changing for next year? How important is continuity in the Trackhouse squad?
Yeah, at the moment, yes, exactly. Another important thing is that Raul knows the bike, and he adapted very quickly to the 2023 bike. Now, of course, the question mark will be how will he adapt to the 2024 bikes? As you might remember, we're going to introduce for him the new bike in Silverstone. So in Silverstone next race, both Miguel and Raul will have the same bike as the factory team, as Maverick and Aleix. And so this will be also interesting how this process will go. And he adapted very quickly, and he sometime when even in my experience, sometime when you have let's say young riders, even if Raul is in his third season, but you can see some spots, some highlights, no, time to time, maybe sometime in a free practice, sometime one qualifying session, but you can kind of feel that things are moving on, no, are moving up, and maybe you don't see on a final results, you don't see on a final classification or on a paper, but you can feel, no, working in the team and knowing everything. So that's what we felt about Raul. So, I mean, in terms of results, let's say maybe the best performance was Barcelona when he was leading the sprint race and then he crashed. But this is one of the signs I'm talking about. You know, it's one of the things that tells you that, okay, if when we will put everything together, we can do something. And so that's all this type of analysis, no, talking, of course, with the engineers working with him, talking to him, talking to everybody. And so, yeah, we decided to take this challenge and to bring forward Raul and see in the next couple of years what we will be able to do. And of course, the fact that he already knows the bike for next year will be important. I don't know. We have to see. Of course, in a factory team, we have two great riders. Riders capable to win races, to challenge for the championship. We have seen, and but of course, the question mark will be how long they will take to adapt, to switch from a Ducati to Aprilia. How different is it's also interesting from our point of view to understand. For sure, from engineers, it's very important to understand maybe what are the differences. But from sports point of view, from riders' performance point of view, they have to adapt themselves to a new bike. And so we have seen also Maverick, it took some time when he switched from Yamaha. It's a different situation, but anyway, he switched from one bike to Aprilia. It took some time. Miguel and Raul, they seem to be quicker when they switch from KTM to Aprilia, but it's always a question mark. And with Raul, at least we start with something maybe more stable from this point of view.
David, as you said, there have been some real highlights with Raul. You can see how much talent he is, but I mean, from my perspective, it always seemed like he needed some coaching because what he really lacked was consistency. He really needed some help to be always working in the right direction, always, pointing in the right direction, and not trying to do, as you said, too much, too little. Is there any, or too much, too soon? How have you been working towards that? How would you approach trying to get him to be more consistent next year?
Yeah, first of all, we are, I mean, as a team, we working with him, explaining that this, as I said before, is a journey. It takes step by step. You cannot win a race if you don't finish top 5 first, or you're not in the top 10 first. So let's sometime we were kind of joking and say, let's start to make me 1 point. That's all. That's all I want, So I mean, just to explain that is a journey. So you have to start to be consistently in a top 15, then be in a top 10. Then be in a top 5, or at least arrive on the racetrack on Thursday and know that you can fight. That's what we working on. And of course, this you build up this with let's say, assuming that the rider has a talent and he can ride fast the bike, which more or less everybody in MotoGP can do. Then it's a matter of making comfortable. So setting up the bike. Try to follow his direction, for instance, on the electronic setting, on bike setting and everything. So try to make him comfortable to exploit the potential. I mean, this is normal for everybody. And I mean, in a MotoGP, everybody in MotoGP is a race winner. Most of them, they are world champion. And so, of course, the level is very high. And the small details makes the difference. That is where we are working. No? If you want to make a difference, we have to work on the details. We have to work a lot. We have to work on everything. So this type of thing, and it's quite exciting. I'm quite exciting to go into this work and this process with Raul, because also we felt it's like a sponge, in some sense. And sometimes he wants to know, he listens, and so together with his engineer, his crew. And all the Aprilia engineer working with us. So we're going into this process, and it's I think it's quite exciting for everybody to see where we can end up.
You brought young riders into the Suzuki team, Davide. I mean, Maverick, Alex Rins, Joan Mir. But Trackhouse is in its first season. You guys are looking for a title sponsor. So is it difficult sometimes to play that game between investing in a young rider and then also looking around MotoGP now, where you have so many good riders that are potentially available, to think, okay, do we stick or do we twist, and go with maybe a bigger name with more experience?
Yeah. To be fair, to be honest, I realizing that it's a different approach working for a factory team compared to working for an independent team. In a way where, it's true. The commercial side is a part of the game, because as an independent team, you have to secure backup, financial backup. You have to secure sponsor. You have to get finance at the end. I mean, being sustainable. Let's say, when you work in a factory team, you already have your budget. It's a marketing budget. They allocate the budget. If you find a sponsor, you just save some company money. If not, I mean, the company spend a little bit more, but that's it's not a drama, let's say, And so working for an independent team, you have to take this into account. And also maybe you have to do more a short-term plan in some sense, It's true. But okay, as a Trackhouse, we also want to look a little bit forward. So like, for instance, with Raul, it will be nice to build up something. And okay, Justin Marks gave us a strong commitment, let's say, when he took over the team and Trackhouse project was born, he said that we want to become a destination. So it will be something, of course, it's very challenging, it's very fascinating, but something where we can have a medium-term plan where riders likes to come. For instance, in case of Raul, he was very happy to continue with Trackhouse, and he never really try or push or ask to be maybe to go in a factory team, which would have been a kind of a natural step. After 2 years in the independent team, you normally desire to move in a factory team. So in his case, he was very happy to stay in Trackhouse, and this is where also we want to work more for the future. It's not easy. It's a big challenge, but that's what it is. Not to become a team where maybe a team that has an appeal on the riders, on engineers, on staff, and whatever. So, but it's different. Yes, it's different. Different targets also. Different projects working for independent team compared to working for a factory team.
Also, you have a competitive bike. I mean, we know the Aprilia is good. And so does that change the calculation as well? Because you know that if you get the right rider on the bike, you can score the results. Whereas if you're not sure about the bike, then it may be worth bringing in a young rider who you can develop together with the bike and then maybe score success in the future.
Yeah, this I think is a very important. To have a factory bikes is a key for an independent team, I believe, because exactly. I mean, in case of Raul, we're talking about him. He has the same bike as he will have. Let's say 25, 26. He will have the same bike as Jorge Martin and Marco Bezzecchi. So, if we can create a good atmosphere around him, a good crew. If we make him happy, and we can, of course, set up the bike properly, make him comfortable on the bike, getting a good feeling, he can challenge. I mean, that's also what's happening in Ducati, if you think, no? Like Jorge in a Pramac team challenging Pecco Bagnaia in a Ducati team. And I think in the future, we will see more and more this type of situation, I believe. And to be, let's say, a good independent team, I think it's crucially important to have the factory machine and to have the full support from the factory. So this is one way to be, let's say, appealing, no? To be the destination. it's a crucial important. Of course, if we wouldn't have. Probably, if he would have said, I don't know, we never discussed it about, but if he would have said to Raul, next year you're gonna have the 24 bikes, and Jorge Martin and Bezzecchi will have 25 bikes, I imagine he wouldn't be happy. No, he wouldn't be as happy as he could be now. So that's very, very important. Yes.
Davide, just to kind of put you on the spot, I guess we have to ask who's going to be the second rider. We see some rumors that Miguel's being linked with the new Pramac Yamaha project, and obviously other names are being thrown around as potential second riders in your team. But I mean, what are the kind of characteristics that you're looking for at the moment for that second seat, and will it likely be a different rider, do you think?
Yeah, of course we talking to Miguel, and it's well known that there is also interest from Pramac Yamaha, but that's normal because Miguel is a great talent. He's a MotoGP race winner, and of course is an appealing rider. And so we are now considering, let's say, the two options: whether we continue with Miguel or we go to another rider, and most likely it will be somebody coming from Moto2, I think. And so that's something that we try to figure out by Silverstone. I mean, you have to marriage, you have to be both agree. So that's what we trying to find out. And but of course, now it's time. Probably we are one of the last team to deciding, and now by Silverstone, I guess we will come up with the final decision.
Lastly, Davide, what kind of pressure is there around Joe Roberts for you guys? Because you not only have American fans, but you have maybe Dorna as well. Perhaps Justin and the Trackhouse guys are saying, an American rider might help us commercially. How much of that is always around you like a cloud? Or is it, something that's quite straightforward to deal with?
Yeah, no, of course, it's true that there is some pressure. It has been seen since the beginning, quite a natural move, let's say, to get the American rider with the American team, and then there's been a talk about Liberty Media coming. So of course, the American rider can be interesting on many ways. So yes, we are talking to Joe Roberts. We're talking to his management, and we know that it will be, in certain point, it will be nice project to have. But also we have to put in prospect where we want to go as a track house and what we want to achieve. Is not that's few factor. That's of course commercial factor, sports factor to be considered. So it's, of course, we are considering, but let's see what how we'll finish.
Davide, thank you ever so much for your time and for coming on the podcast after the news about Raul and his contract renewal. And we'll see you next week in Silverstone. I hope everything is going well. Are the bikes going to look a bit different for the 75th anniversary? Is there a plan for that?
Yes, we will have a different livery for the 75th anniversary. I hope you like it, and because it's been a little bit of challenging. We have no history somehow. We entering this year in the 75th anniversary. So we thought something, and so let's see. I think there's a little bit surprises, but let's see. I see you in Silverstone.
Okay, we'll look forward to it. Thanks again for joining us on the podcast. Ciao.
Okay, thank you. My pleasure. Thank you very much. Bye.
Dave, we're also lucky to have an interview with Luca Marini that you managed to record, and we're going to head straight into that now as well. First of all, what was the motivation for basically grilling Luca, the poor chap?
Two motivations. Firstly, because he's a really interesting guy to talk to. He's really, really good at explaining things, explaining the size of racing that you don't always, they're difficult to understand from the outside and that you wouldn't normally think about. He can sort of like put all of these things into words.
Dave, stop. You're making Neil all misty-eyed for Andrea Dovizioso now.
He is. He's the new Andrea Dovizioso, who was the new Casey Stoner. So it's absolutely fantastic to have such a smart guy as Luca on the grid. But the other thing is, it's much more interesting to talk to riders who are struggling than it is to talk to riders who are succeeding. Or like it was always really interesting to talk to Jorge Martin rather than Pecco Bagnaia last year, because Martin had to try to achieve something. He was struggling to beat the factory team. Pecco was playing his cards quite close to his chest. Jorge Martin wasn't always giving everything away. But Marini is going through a really, really difficult time. He's gone from fighting for podiums to fighting for struggling to get a point, struggling not to be last, and that provides a much more interesting conversation, I think.
Neil, Luca has just 1 point, I think, this season. I was he struggled to finish in the top 15 for the first 5 to 6 rounds, and he's only managed it once, I believe. There were all sorts of rumors that he would abandon the project, that, he was very disillusioned with HRC. These have turned out to be false, and he's pushed that narrative heavily to us in his media debriefs. But it hasn't been an easy ride, and you only have to imagine that Marini is buying fully into the promises or the progress that he can see behind the scenes at HRC that nobody else can.
Yeah, exactly. And that obviously hasn't been helped by the fact that Honda realized they took the wrong direction with their 2024 bike, 3 races into this year? I think it was in Austin when they were like, this is actually terrible. We're going to have to go back to the drawing boards. And obviously when the season has started, it takes time to completely come back with something new and fresh again. So I think all of the Honda riders, to an extent, are in the same boat at the moment, where they basically have to make do with what they have, and hope that the big change is coming around. They've sort of said August is probably a bit too early, maybe September. Then that's when they hope that some light will come at the end of the tunnel, and they'll have like a sort of a new bike to try again. But for the moment, it's just keep your head down and keep going with what you do. I guess Marini to an extent can look at Joan Mir, because I think Joan Mir a year ago was in Marini's situation, where it was horrible, desperate, and Mir has not quite been as bad this year. There's definitely been improvement, and he's been the kind of the pick of the Honda riders. I think him and Zarco for sure. So yeah, it's been ugly for Marini. A lot of really quite chastening races, but he is the kind of character I think that's smart enough to not completely fold. He is the kind of the support system around him. I think he's intelligent enough to recognize that it's a really horrible moment, but good times will be coming. Or better times, at least.
Here is Dave's chat with Luca Marini.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock Pass podcast. Luca Marini, Repsol Honda rider, a factory rider. A big change for you previously, because you were part of the VR46 team for a long time, and then to go from being a satellite rider to being a factory rider, it's a completely different change in responsibilities and everything.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. First of all, it's a good change. At the end, I think there are more responsibilities, yes, but at the end, your job must be the same. At the end, the target is always the same: try to be the fastest riders on track and try to win the race or achieve your best result that you can. It's great to have a factory behind you and work for a factory, because you can develop the bike, you can work on every aspect on the development, and all the updates that arrive are very what you need on the bike. This is great as a rider. Is a fantastic feeling, and maybe there is a little bit more work to do, but it's just a pleasure.
As you say, the big change is that you can actually steer the development. You can change the direction of the development, or point towards the direction that things need to go. Can you give a broad example of the sort of thing that you're saying? You're saying the bike needs to turn better here, or it needs to brake better here, or what? Can you give an example of your kind of feedback that you're giving to the engineers?
Okay, well, at this moment we are working on many things, on many areas, so it's difficult to make everything clear. First thing that when I arrived to Honda was trying to feel comfortable on the bike, because when I jumped over the bike, it was quite different compared to the Ducati. The rider position, the seat, the handlebars, completely different. I would say more similar to a standard bike feeling is the Ducati, that is on a different side. Is a little bit special, because I think that they think the rider as a part of the bike, so they put the rider where they want. So I'm trying to do this also with Honda. Try to be comfortable on the bike, but also be in the correct position for the COG of the bike, for the geometry of the bike, and not only in straight position, but also in the middle of the corner. So I was trying to give them my feedbacks about the tank. We built a completely new tank. Was a very good process, together drawing and signing everything. This is the first thing that I made, for example. But then also all the aspect of the bikes, for example, the grip was our biggest problem at the beginning when I tried the bike. Now I think we are close to solve it. We made a huge step. With my experience in the past, I was telling them that in the drive area maybe it was not so bad after some change, but was missing the edge grip especially. But with a clever move, we find the way to have it. I cannot tell you more, but it's important also try to understand in which moment you have problems, because we say always grip is a problem, but there are different parts of the grip area that you need grip during the corner. Is in braking, in entry, in middle of the corner, exit. So at the end, it's important to find what you need in the moment that you need.
What I love about motorcycles is they're always a compromise. There's always something bad about them.
Yeah, always.
Always. And you can always find somewhere which has a little bit more. So are you always thinking about the compromises that you have to make when you say, I would like more grip? Because one of the things that I've heard about you is that you're very good at making priorities. So when you have if there's a list of changes, you know which ones you think will make the biggest difference.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it's important when you ride for a factory, have priorities, because for sure there are many people that are working on the project, but if you are saying to change 5 things, is not so easy also for them. So maybe it's better to say, okay, now the priority is the grip, but at the moment that the grip arrived to a good level, not amazing, but a good level, okay, let's focus on the next. And maybe it was the engine. So, okay, now the engine is working like this, and we need to solve it, because trying to find more performance, more torque, more power, you lose in braking, in stopping power, in turning. So let's think about this and try to balance on another way. And I think also on that side we made a good adjustment, but still not enough, because at the end now we find a standard balance, but it's not enough for be competitive, because now in MotoGP you cannot have something standard. You have to be perfect on every detail. If not, fighting for the top 5 is impossible. At the moment now we have to focus on fight for the top 10.
Yeah, that's something that you came from a bike where you were able to get podiums with, you were able to be competitive, and now your role has changed completely. Now your job is to get the bike somewhere where you can fight for top 10s. How do you cope with that mentally?
Yeah, I think that maybe some riders can have some troubles on this moment, but I'm really strong on this aspect, and I'm not worried about this, because I have a really clear vision in my mind that in the future we can fight for the top with Honda. We are doing a good job. All the Japanese are pushing a lot. I saw a very big effort from them, and this I appreciate it a lot. We just need a little bit more time, but this is what gives me motivation every day. Thinking that one day we will arrive there, and we can say that, okay, we did it, and now let's focus on fight for victories.
Yeah, also, you have a contract for next year, so that must also help give you some quietness, calmness of mind.
Yes, sure, but at the end the pressure is always the same. It doesn't matter if you have the contract for next year, but you want to be in the best position as you can every GP. That
sort of calmness, the focus, it feels to me like Honda is they've been at the bottom, because you joined when things looked very, very bad. But it seems like you're starting on the upward slope, that things are starting to get better, but it's difficult to see from the outside. From the outside, it just looks like terrible.
Yes. Well, I think that the problem also of this year was that at the beginning of the season, we expected to start to raise a little bit our performance, while at the end, sincerely, it was dropping even more comparing to last race of last season, in my opinion. So we made another step down, but now we are rising. We are getting up, but it's not easy, because the level of MotoGP now is incredible, and if you lose 4 years, is a huge amount of time for comeback. Is not like in the past.
Because you're not just trying to catch up 4 years, you're trying to catch up 4 years plus the 4 years that you've just lost to all the other factories.
Exactly. It's like this. Maybe in the change of the regulation in 2027 will help Honda, but maybe no. We need to work on the proper way in these 2 years, because also the method, how the people are working inside of the garage, in the track, need to improve. Because Ducati raised a lot the standard of the engineers, and then also KTM, and also Aprilia. Now Yamaha also is doing a good job. Honda is start to do a very good job, but we are just at the beginning.
The difficulty is, as you say, top 5. The difference, a long time ago, top 10. Well, let's say top 10 was a big gap. Now, top 10 is a couple of seconds, and that makes it even more difficult because the gap in time is small, but the gap in position is huge.
Yes, this is true, but being on a factory also give you motivation, that you say, okay, maybe now we are 15, but with just a little detail we can be 8. We have just to find that little move that will help us a lot, because at the end, if you made 2 tenths faster in the qualifying, maybe you start 2 rows in the front, and then the race is completely different, and maybe you can achieve a good result. And now the difference is in these small details. Maybe we are still the last bikes on the grid, but in my opinion, we are getting closer every time, but still we miss that big jump that we are looking for, especially at the end of this season.
The advantage of a factory is that you can you can make the change, to make the jump from 15 to 18, but the disadvantage is you're a factory team and you're expected, the pressure is much bigger for you to be 8.
This is something that I don't trust so much, because also in a satellite team the pressure is the same, because it's something that comes from inside of you also, and doesn't matter now in which team, for which team you're working, you're riding, because at the end you want to win, you want to beat the other riders. Now the mentality of all the riders changes a lot compared to the past, because now every rider has a factory bike, more or less. Even the satellite bikes are fantastic bikes, not in the past. So every rider start the weekend saying, okay, this race will fight for the podium. And then after Friday, you see your position.
Yeah, and so now you've got 22 riders all fighting for podium instead of in the past 5 riders.
Yeah.
Okay. Luca, thank you very much. That's fantastic. Very interesting as always.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just to wrap things up here on the Paddock Pass podcast, we're going to talk about the Alpinestars Paddock Pass podcast Fantasy League. Basically, everything's great. The Tech Air airbags are magnificent. Dave is winning, and we'll talk about the rest of it on the next show. Only kidding, Dave. There's only so many times a week we can give you a chance to gloat. But if you haven't joined the league yet and you are playing the MotoGP Fantasy League game, then join us, because at the end of this season, Alpinestars will send a goodie bag. Who knows what's inside? Could be a big box. And it's just basically a bit of fun, a bit of banter. And you can, if you're joining us on Patreon, that is, send Neil and I, and certainly Steve, some very derogatory comments about our expertise in selecting riders. And believe me, this year we deserve it. Although Dave is untouchable, so we cannot make any comment.
I mean, there's still a lot of racing left for me to fall flat on my face.
But it's also, it proves the exercise that when you really put your mind to it, you can achieve something, because this is the most dedicated I've seen you this year. And the most emotional, it has to be said. I mean, the era against Raul Fernandez, which, I don't think is going to be repeated, but it was quite shocking to me at several rounds of the season so far.
Yeah, well, I'm giving it my 110%. That's what it is.
Guys, what's in store for you for the last free weekend? I'm heading to the MXGP of Belgium at Lommel. I see in typical style it's going to piss with rain on Saturday, which should make the sand even nicer and deeper and even more treacherous. And then flying straight to the UK from there. Yes, absolutely. I haven't even looked at the forecast. Is there any point yet for Silverstone? And my other big question is, will you be wearing any 1949 garb to help celebrate the 75th anniversary festivities or commemorations that are going on?
Well, a nice double-breasted suit and plus fours. No, I don't think so.
A hat renewal, Dave, but why not?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm nearly old enough to actually own some of that stuff. So, yes, no, I won't. No, I'm not a big nostalgia buff, so I should be leaving it be.
You could probably nip into a kind of cool hip part of London, Hackney, and pick up a penny farthing to arrive at Silverstone on.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Neil, it's also this time of the year when you get extremely excited about staying in Milton Keynes, but you've taken a different turn this year of your accommodation.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it is exactly. It's not Milton Keynes though. I've kind of done Milton Keynes for the last couple of years, and it's perfectly fine. I think it gets a bit of a bad rap. Actually, it's not as bad as everyone makes it out to be. But yeah, I think I'm staying somewhere next to you, Ed, on top of a bar.
And a pub.
Yeah, on top of a pub. So very English experience it should be. So if we're a little bit hungover doing our Paddock Note shows throughout the British Grand Prix, then you'll know what's happened.
That's it for this week, guys. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to check out flyracing.com, rental, and of course, a massive thanks to KTM as well. I've ridden their Duke 990. It's a fantastic motorcycle, really agile, but really torquey and powerful. So, if you go past the KTM dealer and you're mildly curious and you want to have a go on a very extreme and fun naked bike, then have a look or have a try at the 990. We'll be back next week to preview Silverstone. We hope to have another special guest on the show. Until then, enjoy the content on Patreon, also in Steve and Gordo, as we said, with their World Superbike productions. And we'll be back next week.